McDonald, and for the last 5 years I've been producing reality shows for Bravo. Most recently I was serving as the supervising producer on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Orange County, and Vanderpump Rules. That is until recently, when I was iced out and essentially blackballed by all my shows after I started creating adult content on subscription fan sites. Now, why would I start creating adult content? Well, I was extremely burnt out, overworked, and exhausted by the toxic work culture on a lot of the shows that I worked on. I produced 13 seasons of Bravo across 9 different shows. I'm acutely aware of the inner workings and the work culture across the board at the network. Most of these shows, you're working 12+ hour days, 6 days a week, 3 to 4 months at a time. And then I would look at these people in my life who are content creators, and they're working far less than me, making a lot more money than me, doing whatever they want, whenever they want, living a life of freedom. By contrast, I started to look at how much of my life I was devoting to work, and it made me really start to question what I was doing with my life. Now, I'm not an idiot. I knew there was a chance when I started making adult content that it could jeopardize my work with Bravo. But on the other hand, it's 2025. There's Real Housewives and other Bravo reality stars with fan sites. So if someone that's a face of the network can create a fan site, certainly it shouldn't be a problem for someone who works behind the scenes, right? We're seeing guests on Watch What Happened Live being corrected when they use the word hooker and told to say sex worker. We're having adult entertainers bartending in the clubhouse. So I thought, maybe it wouldn't be an issue. Maybe then I could kind of pick and choose which shows I take, evening out my work-life balance a little bit and supplementing my income with the fan sites. I'm not sure if me being iced out was done at a network level or at a production company level, but all I know is that once I started creating this content, things went radio silent with the executive teams on my shows. I haven't heard from the exec team on Beverly Hills since we left St. Lucia, and I haven't heard from the OC exec team since we shot the last reunion, where it became abundantly clear to me that word had gotten out about my fan sites. Once I realized I was being iced out, even though I knew it was a possibility, it still hurt my feelings, to be perfectly honest. For the last 5 years, I've given so much of myself to these shows, pouring my energy, heart, and soul to telling these compelling stories, all while enduring incredibly intense pressure from a lot of my bosses. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone more passionate about their job at Bravo than me. I have loved Bravo and been enamored by Real Housewives ever since I saw Sheree shifting Kim Zolciak's wig out in front of Jimmy John's on Atlanta back in the day. I love these shows. I loved them then, and I love them to this day. And I love them because I know how much they mean to people, because I know how much they meant to me. I was proud and honored to work on these shows, and as it turned out, I was really good at it. I came into the Bravo world in a bit of an unconventional way. Several years ago, I myself was on a reality show much like these shows called Fire Island, and I was on that show during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was battling a serious drug addiction at the time that I was keeping a secret during production. So I know what it's like to be on one of these shows while your life is crumbling around you and you're trying to just keep it together. It's a really unique position to be in, and one that's very hard to understand until you go through it yourself. Shortly after Fire Island wrapped, I was a homeless junkie, shooting up 3 to 4 times a day and was sleeping under bridges, But then I went to rehab. I got clean and I started to rebuild my life. I've been sober for about a year and a half, working 2 jobs, one at a grocery store and one cutting down trees, when I got my first offer to work on a Bravo show. I was so beyond grateful for that job because I honestly thought I'd never work in TV again. So I took it and I ran with it and gave it everything I had. I started out as a logger on Married to Medicine, and I quickly climbed the ladder from there. My next show, I got a promotion. My next show, I got a promotion. By my 4th show, I was promoted to field producer, and I was running a crew on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Within the next 2 years, I was promoted to supervising producer, working directly under the co-executive producers. And for the first time in my life, I really knew I was great at something. And that was consistently affirmed by my supervisors and the cast members that I produced. Most of the showrunners would tell me that I was one of the best field producers they'd ever worked with. Cast members who were notoriously challenging for producers in the past, requesting that I produce their scenes. I was in my element, I was killing it. I was really freaking proud of myself. For the first couple years, I think I was blinded to the toxic culture on a lot of these shows by my excitement to be there. But after a while, I started to step back and question the way these shows were being run. I could see how overworked and stressed out a lot of my colleagues were. And I would look at a lot of the gay men who were showrunners on this show and try to picture my life if I was in their position. And honestly, most of them seemed unhappy, lonely, and some of them quite miserable. Is this really what I want out of my life? Is this a trajectory I want to continue down? So time went on, and my passion for the genre started to wane as a result by how poorly cast and crew were treated at times. And for someone who loves Housewives as much as I do, I was quite shocked by how disenchanted I became. I also developed a bit of a moral dilemma on a recent season when a cast member's sexuality was at the center of a storyline. I found the internal conversations about this person and what they were going through to be extremely insensitive, problematic, and quite frankly gross. A person's coming out journey, if they have one, is entirely their own. Full stop. Now let me be clear, I'm not talking about friends of this person who are also on the show who would naturally be inquisitive and ask questions about someone's life and who they're dating. I'm talking about the entity of a TV show digging into someone's sexuality in a way that's salacious and sensationalized. That's what the internal dialogue felt like to me. Producers encouraging other cast members to ask direct questions that would put this person's sexuality on the spot just felt really invasive to me and crossed the line that I wasn't really comfortable with. I would see people at the executive level who have worked with this cast member for years, seemingly very close, talk to this cast member in a seemingly compassionate way. And then when the cast member would walk away, they completely changed their tune and spoke of this person and what they were going through with such a lack of empathy and respect, even going so far as to using a gay slur, that it was truly shocking. I thought to myself, if this is how they treat this person, someone who has bled out for this show and this network in ways that most people will never know, if this is how they talk about them, they are never gonna have my back. And it turns out I was right. The circumstances around that storyline were a major contributing factor to me realizing that it was time to make a change. I also want to quickly touch on Garcelle announcing her departure from the show because I've seen some wildly negative things said about her online. I could go on for days about what a pleasure Garcelle was to work with, but if you really want to measure the character of a real housewife, ask the crew members who they like to shoot with the most. You can learn a lot about a person by the way they treat the people that they think can do nothing for them. Any morning when the crew found out that we were spending the day with Garcelle, they were ecstatic. And they most definitely do not feel that way about all of the ladies on the show. And I'm so proud of Garcelle for prioritizing her life over a television show. I've found many parallels between producing reality TV and producing adult content. They both offer a voyeuristic view into some of the most vulnerable and mostly unseen moments in people's lives. But I have to say that I've found adult entertainment to be far less invasive than reality TV. It's interesting because most of Bravo's shows and Housewives are centered around conflict. People hurting one another and then making up and then hurting one another again. And society deems that as perfectly acceptable. But God forbid you produce content about people pleasuring each other, making one another feel good. How scandalous, right? When it's more palatable for mainstream society to watch people hurt one another than it is to pleasure one another, it's no wonder the world's in the state that it's in. For me, my life has become much more balanced, more fulfilling, and far less toxic since I started working in adult entertainment. For so much of my life, I made decisions based upon what other people will think. What will my family think? What will my coworkers think? What will society think? Other people's opinions often shape so much of our decision making, and honestly, adult entertainment has been something I've been interested in doing for a long time, but I was too scared to do because of the fear of what other people might think. Man, you've got one life to live and it's yours alone. And I've been having such a blast making this content for the past few months. I mean, working with the Housewives can be fun at times, but traveling the world to film with some of the most beautiful men on the planet is also a pretty top tier job, if you ask me. But while I am extremely proud of a lot of the work I've done with Bravo, I am just as proud of the work that I'm doing now. And let me say this, sex work is real, legitimate work, and it has been since the dawn of humanity. Shout out to all the sex workers out there who have been discriminated against, unfairly judged, or cast aside because of what they choose to do with their own bodies. Those have been villainized by many of the same people who consume the product and services that they provide. So I thank those who have endlessly battled the stigma and demanded a seat at the table, all while building an industry so massive and so profitable that it made it a safe enough space for real housewives like Denise Richards and Larsa Pippen to start creating adult content. What's up, y'all? My name is Patrick McDonald.